Testing 1, 2. No audio still. What is going on? 1, 2. Anybody have? Let's go to. Let's open this up. See what's going on. Still no audio. Testing. Oh, there we go. That was weird to hear myself on the chat. Okay, let me start over again. Apparently we had audio issues too. Hi, my name is Kevin Poorman. I'm a developer advocate here at Salesforce, and today we're going to be working on learning JavaScript. Some of you may be thinking, Kevin, surely you know JavaScript. And the long and short of it is JavaScript is not my favorite language, or as we said last week, JavaScript is not my love language. And I don't know a lot of the ins and outs and tricks and that sort of thing that I need to. And I wanted to take and pass the certification exam. So we're going to be going through the certification exam guide and some of the Trailhead modules associated with it to learn a little bit about the specifics of JavaScript that are perhaps not as intuitive as they could be. To do that, I've got a plugin installed called Run Code. And it gives me a button to run my code. And if I do some JavaScripting here, if I say console log hello world, and then I run this, run my code, you'll see here is my hello world code. So we'll be able to test the items that we see. And one of the things that the JavaScript guide talks about us needing to know is some of the new ES6 or ECMAScript, I can say it right, ECMAScript 6 syntax for variable declaration and scope. So if you are familiar with old school JavaScript, you've probably seen var, and then you give it a name, so foo is equal to 1, like that. And then if we wanted to, we could do function, if I can type, function var, and then we'll say var foo equals 2, and we'll do console log foo there, and we can come out here and say bar to call that method, and then we can say console log foo. Now if we run this again with the var terminology, that's function scope. So we're going to see it first here, printed here, because if we read our code from sort of outside of our variable declarations and methods, we're going to run bar, and bar will go in here and say var foo is equal to 2, and that sets a function scope for this variable that is encapsulated by these curly braces. That doesn't change the var foo up here. That's a different foo. So when we call bar here, our method is going to execute, and we're going to see 2, and then this one here will run, and it's going to capture the foo scope that we set up here, which is 1. So let's go ahead and run this. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. You can see that we got 2 and then 1, just like I described. And that's called the function scope. Now we could do something a little bit different here. We could change this to be using the let syntax. Let foo equals 1. We can do let foo equal 2. Now if we run this again, I'm going to clear that out, and we'll run this here. Run code. We still get 2 and 1. So it turns out that the let syntax is similar in concept and the way it works to the var syntax, but it's different than const. So if I did constant here and constant here, let's see what happens now. So I'm going to run this again. We still get the 2 and the 1, and that's because we still have the scoping in play here. So this constant is scoped to these curly braces, and this reference to the constant is scoped up here. So scoping can be really important. It's a source of bugs that you could run into, because you could also, you may see this in old school JavaScript, you may say var foo, and then you can see this one here, just say foo t equals 2, and then if we run this, we're going to get 2 and 2. So we get there 2 and 2 because we're actually able to access this variable as a global variable because it was defined up here. Okay, so variable scopes, those are important. Let's see, my team is, I think we've fixed the audio issue. So if you are on the stream in the chat, let me know if you can hear the audio, because otherwise I I think we've got that solved. We've got Uladia Souza says, "Hi everyone." Hi Uladia. Where are you from? I am here in rainy Indiana today, working on JavaScript. Another thing that we have is that I want to talk to you about is constants. So if I do constant foo is equal to bar, and then I try to say foo equals baz, that's going to throw an error, right? Because I've run it as a constant assignment to a constant variable. And so once I've assigned this, I can't do anything with it. That's set. That is a simple, a primitive object, as it were, with the value bar. And so I can't reassign it because it's a constant. But if I had constant foo is equal to an object where I had bar baz, and we'll do that this way, just as a quick example, and then I were to do const foo and then do bar is equal to baz2, that won't be a problem. Is it not going to let me? Comma expected. No, this is the array syntax. I want to be able to. It should be a property. Foo dot bar. I don't think that's. Let's run this. Identifier foo has already been. Oh, that's right. My bad. Can't do it that way. And now if I did console debug foo, if I run this, you'll see that I've got baz2 and quooks there. Now the thing that confuses some people, myself included, is once I've declared something a constant, I don't really expect that constant to be able to change. I expect it to be immutable. But in reality, the constant's properties, if it's an object, the properties can change, but that object assignment can't. Does that make sense? Anybody have questions, comments, or snide remarks on that one? So we've got three ways of defining variables. We can use var. Here, I'm going to make this a comment. var, which is old school, ES5 and below. Then we've got let, the new var key, it's the new keyword, and ES6, and we use that to declare a variable inside a given scope. And then we have const to declare a constant variable. Now, constant objects as variables can let's do this. Let's do a variables defined as const that are objects can have their properties changed. Yeah, that makes sense. So that is a bit on scope here. Now I've got the Trailhead module open here, and these are some of the things that we're going to have to work through. Last time we did data types and operators. This time we did scope. Sometimes we may have to do a type conversion, and then we've got things in here like strings, and so I'm just going through some of this stuff. There's actually a Trailhead module here called Modern JavaScript Development, and one of the things it's going to walk us through var, let, const, etc. Some people, one of the things that I heard that I liked a lot when I was reading through this is you might be thinking, if the let keyword is so great and avoids all these confusing bugs, why would you ever want to use var? I don't know. Many JavaScript developers use let almost exclusively. Me. I'm not entirely sure that I'm a expert level JavaScript programmer, but they do suggest that you do too. So while we can use var, we shouldn't. I'll make that note. Don't use var. It's deprecated. All right, that seems like a good note to take. Now, there's also const. We dealt with const, and they're going to be doing some variable definition here too. So we can talk about that. So you can also define, you can do let first name is equal to Kevin, and let last name equal to Foreman. And if I want to do let person equal to an object, first name, last name, I can do that. And if I were then to come down here and say console debug person, let's see what that gives us. Run code. It gives us our first name and last name. So we can create objects from other variables. That's handy. That's very handy. Now, it occurs to me that I am not seeing anything in the chat stream today. If I'm missing questions, let's see, let's do this. Am I missing the chat stream, or is nothing happening? We'll talk about that, because I'm not even seeing it in our little widget down here underneath my face. Weird. Okay, so we'll figure that part out, and then we've got that going on, and so we could actually do this as well, and this is really cool. So you see us putting the key there and the key there, but with ES6 we can actually do let user equal first name, last name, and we're going to do person user. And if we do this, what is my keyword for running it? Run code. Okay, so it's there we go. You can see that it's identical, and so we are able to create that variable, that object, just by dropping the variable into the object syntax. That's handy. Not a lot of, it saves us some duplication. It's enabling flow, whatever that. What are we doing? Okay. Let's see here. And we didn't. ES6 gives us a way of doing data and objects. So we can do destructuring. And that's kind of cool. So what we're going to do is I'm going to create a numbers variable. Pull this over here. So we got let numbers. Okay. Now, if I wanted to grab, say, the first two of these and then all the rest of them, I can do this syntax where I say let 1, 2, 3 others is equal to numbers. And what that looks like, it's called destructuring. And this is really cool. So I can say let first, second, remainder is equal to numbers. And then if I do console log, I can have first, second, and then remainder, like that. Now, what this will look like, can I do run code? Oh, there we go. You can see that I got 1, 2, 3, but I don't have 4. Because what I've done is I've pulled in the first, second, and third variables out of this array by using this destructuring syntax. So if I take the bracket there, the square bracket, and say give me the first one, that's going to map to bracket position 0. Second would be bracket position 1. Third would be remainder. Now what if I wanted to get 1, 2, and then an array of 3, 4? Well, I can do that too, and the way I do that is you can do the same thing. I forget how exactly you do that. Let's look at that. JavaScript destructuring assignment. So this is going to give us AB rest. AB is that's in our assignments. So it's going to assign A to 10, B to 20. And then if we, oh, it's the dot, dot, dot. That's what I was thinking. Okay? So if we wanted to, we could come over here and do dot, 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 remainder. And if we run this again, we get 1, 2, and then the remainder as a array. So you can see destruction can be really useful. You can also do the same thing with destructuring of objects rather than arrays. So I'm told to refresh. Let's see if I do this. Hold on a second. Let me try and refresh here and get the chat. And then bring the chat back. Let's see if it comes up. Spencer, I may need to have you put the chat messages in Slack so I can read them, because I'm not seeing them show up here. Anyway, so you can do the same destructuring with objects. So if we did let some object equal to, and we wanted to do the same kind of work, we could pull in, this is the destructuring of an assignment, but there's also, you can do this with this kind of work. So let's do an apple. Copy and paste this. So const apple, we got red delicious. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. We're going to do gold rush, my favorite apple, and it is green with gold dusting, and it's a large apple. Okay, and then down here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a destructuring assignment, let brackets, I'm going to do type color remainder equal apple. Now if I come down here and I do console log, oh, remainder is already used, so we'll do object, we'll do type, type color remainder object, like that. And if I rerun this, row, type is not defined. It would help if I could actually type. Not to make a type joke when I misspelled type, but it helps if I can type. Okay, meta. All right, let's try that again. Oh, that doesn't like that. Can you not destructure the remainder? Let's look. Destructuring assignment. This is with arrays. And if we look for an object example, let's keep going. Parsing an array from a function. And assigning the rest of an array to a variable. So we can do that with arrays. Oh, look, you can do it with unpacking values from a regular expression match. Ooh, that's exciting. Okay, hold on just a second. I gotta pull something up here. I'm going to pull this open. I'm gonna mute it. And muting it so I can see the chat over here. Okay. Let's see here. Scroll back up. I want to say hi to everybody. Hey everybody, Rooftop Garden and Girish and Michael, and seeing everybody talking about the audio. I'm glad to hear that the audio is working now. Is this JS will be used in SFRA? Mayerish, I'm not entirely sure what that means. Amir Khan, I'm doing good, and you can hear me now. That's good. Audio is loud and clear. Somebody's in New York. Let's see here. Hi Kevin, so which type we need you? I'm not sure what that means. Oh, so the best practice I would say is to use let instead of var. So you can use var if you want, but I wouldn't. Var, because it can be defined as a global scope variable, can really confuse things, and you can dig yourself quite the hole that way. I'll put it that way. Let's see here. What else we got? And you get the split operator, isn't it? Yep, we're talking about that. And you can do the use like let. Okay, well, huh. So let's look at our code here. And somebody's suggesting that we do like this. That we destructure using let equals apple. But I don't think that's valid syntax because we haven't defined anything. So, Maria, if you want to say more about that, let equals try this. I'm not so sure about that. But we can go ahead and... yeah, I don't think that's what I want to do. So, if we have an array, we can do it this way. What happens if we treat it like an array? Hey, hey. And now if we run this, still not a way to do it because apple is not an iterable. Huh. All right. And if we leave this as a curly brace, it doesn't like that because it should be able to pull size. But if we just did that, if we destructure it this way, we can grab apple, or we can grab size. Oop. Okay, and then if we run this, and I'm going to show you where this gets really useful here. Okay, gold rush with gold dusting large. Those are my 3 properties from that. Now, you can use destructuring to really great benefit when you have some data coming back that you know you really want to use. So in a, let's do like a wire assignment. So if you had at wire, some wire function, and you wired that into a method, you did some method name, you had it's error and data. I hope I have those in the right order, like this. So you may be familiar with this sort of function that we've got here, where we've got error and data almost certainly comes in, if it's pulling records back, it's going to have a records property. So data will look something like this, and we'll have data, and it'll have records, and it'll look like this, that kind of thing. And what you can do is you can destructure that and do something like this. You can say let records equal I think, do I have that right? Now I'm second guessing myself. Records. No, that's not a destructuring assignment. What am I thinking here? There's a way to do this. So if I wanted to, I could let and do data, do records. That's what I want. Records, and then is done equal data, and it'll pull those values out of the data object. So now I've got a if records is not equal to undefined, I can worry about that instead of having to do something like data records like that. Okay, so destruction can be really useful, especially in situations where you've got a complex data structure coming back and you want to do something with only a part of it. And that's my favorite use for destructuring. And I know I fumbled around with it, but there, like I said, I don't get to do this a lot. But that's one use for destructuring. And I'm going to get rid of this all because it's giving me issues about not understanding some of my syntax there, because it's specific to Lightning Web Components, not just JavaScript. Let me tune in here and see what people are saying in the chat. Not splitting the object value. Maria wants me to try something and it will work as split an object. Mario, give me the give me the full code there, and we'll try it out. So that's destructuring, and let's go back here. So that's some of our things here. We've got we talked about this last week, the string interpolation trick with backticks, but let's do an example of that. I'm going to pull back some of this so that I have my example here. Undo, 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 undo. Come on, there we go. So down here where we've got our console logs, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do console log, and I'm going to do a backtick, right? And now that I have a backtick, I can use string interpolation, and the string interpolation operator in JavaScript is the $ curly brace, and I can say type like this, and do another one, color, and its size. Okay, now I can even, since this is string interpolation, I can say Apple type is, and I can come over here and I can say period. I'm going to put in a /n, which is a new line character. I can say, and its predominant color is. Oop, there's 2 spaces there. Come over here, period /n, and its size is. And now if I run this, boop boop, you can see that I've got that spaced out, and it's done the interpolation for me. It's put in the gold rush from my object, and since I am pulling that out with my object there, I have a variable named type that it's aware of. Color, same thing. And I've got a little bit of formatting with the space there because I forget that after a new line it doesn't want that. I've got one of those over there. So now if I, because I'm a perfectionist, if I run this, now I've got this all nicely, neatly formatted. Now this is really handy in not just console log statements. I just was talking to somebody, I think it was about a week ago, and they were using this string interpolation syntax to dynamically change the CSS classes on some of their Lightning Web Components. So you can do a lot with string interpolation, but that's some of our new ES6 syntax. Let's check in here and see. Got a suggestion on how to use our destructuring of an object. And we'll make that a lowercase. Charlotte is equal to Apple, and then we can do console log charlist. Let's see what happens. Invalid or unexpected token. Let's see. Char list equals. It's because you want a semicolon. Interesting. So this is going to give us. I'm not entirely sure what this gives us over. So it's destructured this, but it's not really destructured anything. It's just giving us, because if I were to do this, console log Apple, it's identical to just dropping the object in there. So I'm not entirely sure what the destructuring of that gives us, other than a different name. Can I destructure it and pull it out by an index type? Let's find out. Undefined. So that's not going to work. Can I do it as type? Let's see. You mean code language not defined or supported? It's JavaScript. JavaScript's defined. Yeah, well, I can pull it out this way, but again, destructuring it this way doesn't give me any benefit because I could just do Apple type, right? So if I do that, gold rush and gold rush. So destructuring with the ... the split operator, handy for arrays. Doesn't appear that we can do much with it in terms of an object. And let's see here. Ajinka he never got to message me about the dynamic styling use case. Yes, hit me up on Twitter. My username on Twitter is @CodeFryer. So @CodeFryer. And I'm going to ask Spencer to drop that into the chat there as a link. It's twitter.com/CodeFryer. Follow me for more Twitter or JavaScript interesting things. Yeah. Okay, so we've done destructuring, we've done the string interpolation. What else we got here? We've done the better image messages. Let's see if we can pass this quiz now. What is the advantage of declaring a variable with block scoping? Variables declared with a box statement cannot be hoisted. That's what I'm going to go with. And then what is the new destructuring syntax? It allows you to convert an object to an array. We can do unpack values from an array. We'll try that and see if that gives us 100 points. Got it in one. Woo! Okay. So let's take the next unit and see what we got going on here. Understanding JavaScript functions. Now, this is the fun one because JavaScript has always had this whole, like, I don't know, it's got 5 different ways of declaring a function. You can do function, Bob, params, methods, like that. That's how you can define a function 1. You can also do const function name equals function params, like that. And with ES6, you can actually do you can do foo like that. And these are called arrow functions, or sometimes fat arrow functions. You can see we named it because of the fat arrow there. And I say fat arrow because other programming languages use skinny arrows. I don't mean to fat shame JavaScript syntax, but that's a fat arrow. And so there are lots of different ways of declaring functions in JavaScript. ES6 gives us this one, and this one has some special and interesting properties. So before we go into that, let's go ahead and figure out how regular JavaScript functions work. We've got function Bob that takes parameters, and so we can say, we could do something fun like destructure params. This is another common use case for destructuring. You can say, let param1, param2, rest of params equals params. And then we could do console log param1, console log param2, console debug. You notice sometimes I'm doing debug and sometimes I'm doing log. Now in my particular case, inside of Visual Studio Code, there's not a lot of difference between log and debug. I'll show you what the difference looks like inside of a browser here in just a second though. So I can do rest of params like that. Now if I came down here and I said Bob, and then I put an array 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like that, and I were to run this, here I go. I've got my destructured params. Interesting. Param1, param2, rest of params. Oh, you know what? That's because I did it as an object. Silly Kevin. Instead of an array. There we go. Now if I run this, I should get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so draw attention here to console log and console debug. They're a little bit different. You can both get in things in the console. Speaking of which, let's open up the console. Did you know that you have what's called a REPL, a read event print loop, built into your browser here? And you can get to it in a number of different ways. I usually right-click and choose Inspect. That's going to open up the inspector, and we got a couple things here. This is sort of the HTML source code of the project, and as I hover over different things, you see the scope of what I'm hovering over is highlighted on the left. But the important part here is this console. This allows you to run JavaScript. So if I did this, let me copy and paste some of this code here. And I put this in here and hit enter. You'll see that it gets me 1, 2, and then I get a disclosure triangle, and it tells me there are 3 elements in this array. That's the difference between console.log, which is just going to give me the value here. Console log of 1 from this here, parameter 1 is going to show me 1. Console log parameter 2 is going to show me 2. Console debug will give me a disclosure triangle with the rest of my elements listed. I find that terribly useful. So if I don't know whether or not I'm dealing with an object or an array or a string, instead of doing console.log, I tend to do console.debug. That way, when I'm debugging my Lightning Web Components or my JavaScript, and I'm here in the JavaScript console baked into, in this case, Chrome, but there's one in every browser, I can actually see and get details about everything here in my code. So when I go to do this, when I go to do that debugging log, I can set it up that way. And we've created this function. This is sort of a traditional function. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a arrow function, and we're going to how to get to one of those. Now remember I showed you that we had the way of doing function Bob. We can also set this to be, we can also say let Bob equals function like that. And there's even a shortcut for it. You can say, like, in this case, let result equals function, and you're going to give it your parameters. Therefore, it's like that. No big deal. Doing this, we haven't changed anything. We've just changed the syntax of how to define that. So having changed this to let Bob equals function, I can still run this, and it's still the same. Okay. Now, the other thing that's interesting is I can reduce this into something called an arrow function. So if I say let Bob arrow equal params, I've now done effectively the same thing with Bob here, but with Bob arrow function, I'm going to be doing it the same way. And what I'm going to do is I'm just do console log params for right now, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do Bob arrow like that. Now I'm going to copy and paste this up this far. It did not. There we go. Now we'll go back over to our console inside Chrome. I'm going to use this little clear console, and then I'll paste again, hit enter. It doesn't like that Bob has already been used. Oh, it's because I already defined Bob. Okay, my bad. So if I go up here, I can do Bob 2, and we'll set this to Bob 2, right? And what it's given me now, disclose that a little bit, is I've got, here is my 1, 2, 3, and then I've got my prototype array from my second variety, because it knows it's a variety, and it's giving me the prototype information. Okay, so those two things, these two methods, look largely like they do exactly the same thing, but how they handle scoping is different. Okay, and this is where we get real deep into the weeds of how JavaScript works. But before that, let me tune into the chat for just a second. You guys use Apex, right? Why are you teaching JavaScript? Indrate J Ready, you're right. We do a lot of Apex, but we also use JavaScript for the Lightning Web Components, which are the UI framework for building custom user interface elements in Salesforce. And so we have to have a base knowledge of JavaScript in order to be writing those Lightning Web Components. And so what we're doing now is we're sort of working through everything in order to make sure that we have that base knowledge of JavaScript in order to write Lightning Web Components. And then let's say here, yeah, I'm getting some comments about open source and Then we've got Amaria, who's still working out how to do the destructuring of an array, and we can destructure an array. It was the object we were having problems with. But let's go back to our functions here. I want to go back to our Trailhead module because, okay, Bob array. Oh, it's because it's Bob arrow. Silly me. Bob arrow. And you'll see that it's going in error because Bob's already been defined. Let me do this again. I'm going to get rid of... We've already defined Bob arrow, so I just need to call it. And it throws it into my... Why are we in the debugger? Bob array is not defined. It's, oh, that's because it's... Yes. My bad. Bob arrow. That's better. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we'll put that in parentheses. I can do this. There we go. You see, now it's giving me the same thing. But, again, as I was saying, how they handle scope is different. Arrow functions handle scope in a different way. So if we're looking here, we've got the arrow function defined, and now notice we don't have to have curly braces if it's a one-liner. We can just put in, you know, that bit right there, and we also don't have to have a return keyword, and we don't have to have a function keyword. So these are a lot quicker to type, right? And as you go through this, there are some less code, and they can remove some of the confusion with the this keyword. Now, this is part of the this keyword is part of the scoping system of Apex, and it can cause issues. All right. This is one of the things that makes me not love JavaScript so much, is the this keyword. The dynamic nature of this refers to the current scope. So if we look at this block of code, also the word this is hard to talk about because you use this everywhere as a placeholder for something. But if you see here, we've got a method, we've got an object named message with a property hello. And then we've got a method here in it. So message.showMessage is a function. And we have this.name.forEach. And we're going to go over the names. So Sue and Joe. Then we're going to console log this.hello. So it should say hello plus the name. Now, for grins and giggles, let's just run this. Okay, I'm going to come over here. We're going to move on, get rid of some of this stuff. And if I run that, we get undefined Sue and undefined Joe. Why? Because this.hello is not defined. But you're saying it's right there. It is right there, but that is not what this refers to, because this is confusing. So you're going to get undefined Joe. Referencing this keyword inside of a nested function just refers to the scope in which the object was invoked. So if we come back over here, every time we use this inside of this nested function, so a function inside of an object, it's only going to refer to the hello property that's defined out here. So if I were to change this to say let hello equals word, and we run this again, well, that didn't do what I thought it would do, because I thought that would pick that up. So let's investigate that a little bit further. But I know for a fact that what it's doing is it's trying to access hello in an that's undefined, because this keyword does not point to inside this scope. Okay, that got a lot of confusing real quick. So let's look at the Trailhead here a bit, and if we come down here, we can say you can do something like this, where you use the self.hello, which is going to refer to the lexical scope because it's defined within the show methods here. You see how it's doing let self equals this. So we're basically doing self.hello, which is that actually this.hello. That's not confusing at all. And it gives us the hello Sue and hello Joe, but this is kind of a workaround. So the arrow functions in ES6 have changed the way this works, where they're giving us the ability to have lexical scope built in. So by changing the nested function, so the for each stuff here, because the for each, this function takes an anonymous function. That's what I misread. So in this situation, this is referring to this function scope, not the message scope. Okay, so by replacing this with an arrow function, I will get this right. I will find the right way to talk about this. By doing this hello, now I believe we should have it working. Hello Sue, hello Joe. And we're doing that because this arrow function syntax uses lexical scope by default. So we don't have to do that scope self workaround thing. Because what we want to do is we want to refer to the lexical scope, which is this object, not the functional scope, which is this function. So this can get you into trouble with nested functions, and the way to get around it is to use arrow functions. Hopefully that was clearer than mud, and I feel a little muddy-headed about it, so feel free to ask questions, comments, or Snyder marks on that one. Let's see. Milan's telling me how I really feel about this. This is hard. That's what I think about this. Let's go with how can I like more than once? Hey, Francis, I know you. And then let's see here. Best resource to learn modern JavaScript. Indrate J. Reedy, I'm going to say the best way to learn modern JavaScript is actually, I find this is a very well-written, very clear Trailhead. It's called Understanding Modern JavaScript Development. It's a module in Trailhead. I want to encourage you to work through that. This has not quite got me to the point where I'm comfortable riffing on this and self and the scopes. I still fumble on it a little bit, but this has gotten me to the point where I feel like I understand it and can work through it. And this is one of this keyword in JavaScript is probably 80% of my loathing and hatred for JavaScript, because I've been bitten by this so many times. And I get it that it's my fault. I shouldn't, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. But I still struggle with that sometimes. So I like how we can handle that. Then we've got this, we've got better parameter handling. And let's see, we can do manual checks within the function for optional parameters. Now, ES6 allows us to have optional assignment parameters. If you've ever used other languages like Ruby or Java or I don't know that I've ever tried it in Apex, but you can. What you can do is you can give a parameter, say parameter 2, and you can give it a default value. And if that default value is nothing, it doesn't matter. If default value is given, it doesn't matter if the user sends something to it. So let's actually let's just dig into this here. Okay, I'm gonna put this in here. We're gonna paste this. Now I've got an optional parameter world, and so if I run this hello. And I run that again, you're going to see hello world. Because it picked up the optional value as given world. Now if I were to do something like param a, like this, and I were to call param a, like that, if I were to do this, we'd get hello undefined world, because param a is undefined. But if I did param a is equal to not undefined, you silly goose, and run that, now I get hello not undefined, you silly goose world. Okay. Now there's some gotchas with this. You can't do this everywhere. Okay. So if you were to make param 2 say world, and then you wanted to have param 3, you're going to run into an issue because this one's optional, but this one isn't. And so if you go in here and you were to do Bob, and we change this to be param 2 and param 3, okay, then what happens when we run it is we still get an undefined. We get a hello Bob world. What? Hello Bob world. That's because I put that in there. It wanted to change it for me. Thank you. No. Okay, so if I do hello Bob and run this, we're going to get an undefined. Hello Bob undefined. And it's because when you're using optional parameters like this, your optional parameters have to be the last ones. Now you can have two optional parameters. You can do this. You can say foo. Okay, so this should say hello Bob foo. Make that, space that out a little bit. Scroll up hello Bob foo, because we can send parameters for our optional ones. So we can override world with Bob, but it goes in parameter order. So again, if you're going to use optional parameters, they have to be at the end of the method declaration or the function declaration. Let's see what we've got here in the chats. Let's see. Can we stop saying this? No, Mr. Rohithala. We have to say this all the time. Let's see. Can someone help me for something, please? Lorik, let me know what we can help you with in JavaScript. It looks like you retracted your message. Does the default value replace a falsy value? No, it won't. That's another thing we should talk about. JavaScript has this thing where there's true, false, and then there's also truthy and falsy. And honestly, this makes me feel like JavaScript was invented by politicians, because true is true, but truthy could be true, or it could be a positive value. And falsy could be false, or it could be null, etc. So there are two ways of looking at how you determine if something is a true comparison. So if I were to do, this is my favorite example. So if 1 equals 1, not assignment, 1 equals 1, console log true. Okay, now if you are used to a statically typed language like Apex, you're going to say, well, the integer 1 cannot ever equal the string 1, and you would be right and sane and a reasonable human being. However, the authors of JavaScript are not necessarily all three of those things at once. I like to think of them as being slightly, I don't know, benevolently evil. They're going to try and help us understand the truthy and falsy of this. So if I run this, you'll see that it comes back and says true. And again, if you write insane, you may be going, no, the integer 1, that is an integer, cannot equal the string 1. But in JavaScript, it does. And the way you get around that, the way you go, no, 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 I want you to compare its type as well, is to put a triple equals in. Now if I run this, you'll see that nothing happens, because I don't have an else clause. So else console log false. Okay, run that again, we should get false. And that's because in this situation, the triple equals knows that the number 1 is different than the string 1, and so it will not accept it as true or truthy because it is not an exact match. So triple equals for the win. Somebody asked about best practices earlier. I try to always use triple equals and never double equals for comparison. This is where dragons exist. If you remember the old school maps where they'll be like off in the corner where they don't really know what's there, there'll be a picture of a sea dragon and there's this Latin phrase that says, "Here be dragons." The comparisons in JavaScript are where the dragons are. Let's see here. Somebody else is asking, I'm adding random numbers into an array with a button, and always the previous random number won't be saved into the array. I'm doing the numbers with push. Lorik, I'd have to look at your code, and I'm happy to do so, but we only have 3 minutes left for today, so let's see what else we have in the comment section here. Spicy View says, with all Salesforce release, Salesforce is getting worst. Please inform your internal team that developer and admin are working to customer solution, not to give headache. Okay, Spicy View, if you can give me some details about that on Twitter, maybe reach out and tell me exactly what you've got, what you mean by it's getting worse, and why it's giving you a headache. Let me know. I'd love to take that to the internal teams, but I need more details. Otherwise, they're gonna laugh at me, is what they're gonna do. And as an engineer, I would probably laugh too. So I need specifics. Okay. Let's see here. 4 more likes for 50 likes, guys. Oh, come on. Give me 4 more likes, please. 50 likes, please. I'm doing my best kitten impression. Okay. Now, let's see here. Jeremy Wright says, when you learn about scope and execution context, I think this will be easy to grasp. Jeremy, I hope so. But as somebody who's used JavaScript for a long time and feels like I have a good grasp of execution and context, I think this is still mighty confusing to those of us who come from languages that only have lexical scope. So when I think about JavaScript's this keyword, part of what doesn't work in my head, what the stuff that just doesn't click, is that I can't think of another language where lexical scope doesn't rule. And I've used Ruby and Python and Basic and COBOL. And I mean, I've used a whole ton of different languages over my life. And I can't think of one where lexical scope wasn't the ruling scope. And so when we have this, it's jarring. I guess that's just the best way I have to put it. We're going to keep working through the JavaScript stuff for the rest of the month. We had such great interest last time that we have updated this, and we're going to be doing more of these JavaScript sessions. You all get to work along with me and fumble along as we learn and practice JavaScript in preparation for the JavaScript exam. And the end, what we're going to do is we're going to work on some of the super badge exercises a little bit. So with that said, I want to thank you all for tuning in. I see people from all over the world. Thank you for your candid feedback, your questions, your comments, and your snide remarks. I really appreciate those. And we will see you again next Thursday at 1 p.m. Bye-bye.